Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio, and today I am joined by my father-in-law, Dr. Tom Lambshead, Pastor Tom Lambshead, T, and what, like 35 other titles?
I've got more titles than you can shake a stick at.
Actually, yeah, could you walk me through all your titles? Like,
No. No. My favorite is husband or dad. Father-in-law to you.
Yeah.
And those are my favorite ones. But pastor is another, like, career favorite.
Yeah.
I've got other titles, but that's a sort of career favorite to me.
Fair enough.
But hey, it's not about titles, is it? It's about what we can do and how we serve the Lord the best with how He's wired us.
Exactly. And I was just curious because as I was sitting down thinking, I'm like, he does have so many titles, but I can't remember what even half of them are.
Yeah, well, I can't either, so we're in the same boat.
Fair enough. And thank you so much for doing this today. I'm so excited that you're with us. You were my first interview back when I did the blog, and I started the chat with series. So you were my you're my second repeat because Steve came back on, but we did one about comics. So you're my first repeat where we're looking at stuff from the faith-based perspective.
Great.
So thank you for joining us. It's been a while since we've last been able to do this chat because it was back in 2016, but April.
Yes.
And a lot has gone on with you since that. So what's kind of happened?
Well, I mean, a lot of things. On a family note, we added another member to our family. I mean, that's our greatest joy, right?
Yeah.
In life is just to see, a family grow and care for each other and meet together and love each other. I mean, on the career side, I've changed my job completely.
Yeah.
From last time, and and done some more international traveling and consultations as well. So life has sort of been good and changing.
Yeah, it's been very go for you recently. I know when we were looking at doing this, we started talking about this at the end of September, early October, and this was the first date we could do it.
Yeah, it is a busy life, and it's just a uniquely busy season for me. And yeah, you can't fit it all in, but you try your best.
Right. So what have some of those changes been? You were with Pioneers, and then...
Yeah, I mean, most recently I was a director of professional development, and it's Pioneers International, which is a international faith-based NGO, is how to call that. And so did that for a number of years, and that gave me some international exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But I've since left Pioneers to do a lot of the same thing, actually within that organization too, and have moved into my own consulting business, coaching business, doing the same kind of professional development, same kind of consulting, and but also have added to that some help with our denomination, the Associated Gospel Churches, and that's one of those titles, regional director for the AGC.
Oh, we're going to touch on that.
Yeah, and but I also one of my other happiness is helping out at a local church and being a sort of an interim teaching pastor. So I'm juggling several things.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of keeps me busy.
Definitely. Plus being handyman extraordinaire, doing stuff around your house and then helping out here at ours.
Yeah, well, my son-in-law bought a house, so I try to help.
It is greatly appreciated, and I know your daughter appreciates it as well.
Good.
You kind of alluded to this. You've had the opportunity to teach at some conferences and seminaries, both local in Canada and international.
Yes.
How has that been, and can you walk us through that?
It's just the Lord's goodness to me to allow me to have a bit of a broader reach than just simply within Canada. So this year, for instance, I was in Krakow, Poland, to do it's it's a leadership development amongst 13 area leaders of Europe, and try to develop their team and help them to understand how they work together, how they could work together better, and how to do strategic planning. And they allowed me to watch them do the planning and evaluate how that team is functioning. And you know, that, I mean, it was a joy to see how that team was learning each other, learning how to better function, and then to actually see them do it like live, as they did some strategic planning. And so that it was truly a sense of the Lord's pleasure to see them actually implementing the training and the assessments that I was able to do for them. So, I mean, that was earlier this year. Just recently, like 2 weeks ago, I was over in Hungary. Mm-hmm. And that was with the Leadership Development Conference. 23 nominated potential leaders or leaders for the European continent, and just helping them with some of the things that they need to learn to grow in their competencies, both in terms of leadership, but also in understanding multiculturalism, understanding mentoring, and those kinds of things. So yeah, that's really kind of recent, endeavors in terms of international travel.
Awesome. And then, just to spur this question on you, but it's one I try to ask whenever someone's been granted a unique perspective. Like, you're getting to see how the church operates over in other parts of the world in comparison to Canada.
Yes.
So, what's a strength, or how do you see the church being different there than here, would you say?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of differences, not the least of which is we're so resourced in North America, and in other parts of the world that is either pre or post-Christian, mm-hmm. Or not Christian at all, for that matter. There just so few resources in their own language, and oftentimes so few Christians that even the strength of Christian community is at a loss. And mm-hmm. so we are highly blessed on both of those here, mm-hmm. In the Western world, at least, where we have all the resources you can imagine, and all the people, if we were to find them, that could support us in our Christian walk and life. So that's a very, very big thing that they're missing there, and so I'm always a bit saddened when you see some of these churches and realize they just aren't resourced the way that we are. So that's only one of the areas. I think one of the advantages that some of these non-Western types of places, and most of my ministry has been in the West.
Yeah.
But in some of these non-Western places, is a real, those who are Christians, those churches that do exist, they are truly authentic, almost first century New Testament churches. They have so little other than themselves, and some of the places don't even have a full copy of the Bible, for that matter. And so they really have to be New Testament kind of churches where they are relying on each other for everything, for truth and for friendship, sometimes even for food and for support and protection. So those are some of the things I've seen in the non-Western sorts of places where we've been. And Karen and I have had the joy of living in Thailand for a period of time and visiting a lot of other non-Western sorts of places. And so that's a little bit of my view of what church is like around the world.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I know I don't have that opportunity. Yeah. Lord willing, I might someday, but at the moment, wherever I've been, it's always been in the West, in Canada, or in Great Britain, where it's still...
Yes, well, it's a Western society, yes.
Yeah, so I love hearing about those things. So, you've recently taken on a higher role within the AGC, which you just mentioned. Could you again say what your role is, and what does that look like?
Well, I mean, the role is technically called AGC East Regional Director. So there's East and there's West and there's Quebec and there's Maritimes, and so the east is basically anything east of Manitoba.
Okay.
Except for the Quebec region, or Francophone region, we should call it. And so just that is an interim basis, because there is a full-time role for that, but it needs to be voted on at the conference, which is June the 1st. And and I'm, because of my other responsibilities, not able to take that role on a full-time basis.
Yeah.
But they did ask how many days a month might I be able to apply to that, and I said, well, let's say 10 days a month. So for 10 days a month, I'm serving the Associated Gospel Churches as a regional director for Canada East. And so that involves a whole lot of things, a lot of which I'm not even yet aware of, since I've only just sort of started the beginning of September. But there's a lot of care features in it, caring for our leaders. But for the most part, I'm really only doing that which is somewhat regarding development of some sort. So the leadership development, training of some of our men and our women, being involved in some new structural changes that we're making in order to gain better opportunities for objectives and goals and production, I guess you might call it. So yeah, so it's pretty broad, helping churches with their search teams, helping churches understand who they're looking for and why, how they're led, how they could be led. And so it's all leadership sort of related at the moment. The big job, full-time, probably involves more care and more travel within the Ontario.
Yeah.
But for the moment, that's what I'm doing.
And some of that is similar to stuff you've done, stuff you did at Calvary, stuff you're doing with Grindstone.
Well, and this is it, and that's part of the reason why it's a joy for me.
Yeah.
Because it's what I do. It's what I'm trained for. It's my experience. My education is there. But that's why they asked me, because I'm doing that in other spheres of my life as well. So it just made a bunch of sense,
Yeah, exactly. And then this is something that I've realized more so since I moved out to Hamilton.
Right.
What can you tell us about the AGC? Because we're not really that well known. I mean, in Toronto, there was a lot more AGC churches, so I guess with that, when people ask, they'd be like, okay, it's happening less, but I've noticed specifically out here, and at points in particular when St. Clair was doing an information session, and someone's like, what is the AGC? And I'm like, we're the non-denomination denomination. That's like the joke catchphrase for us. So, yeah, what can you tell us? What can you tell the listener?
Well, I mean, yeah, the AGC is more defined by what it's not than what it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're alluding to. It's not true. We have actual strong distinctives. But the truth of the matter is, there is no clear picture of what the AGC is. So what is the AGC? There isn't a clear picture. And there's a specific reason and a verified reason why that's true. The thing that's true about the AGC is a conservative doctrinal statement. Okay, and that's the rallying point. But in terms of philosophy of ministry, there isn't a coordinating philosophy of ministry, and there's a desire not to have, so that each of the churches can determine how they feel God is leading them in the community in which they live.
Which is
right?
Awesome.
Right, so that is an intentional strategy of our denomination to not just give autonomy to our churches, but to expect them to find their own philosophy of ministry that works. So you can't go to another AGC church and have it look the same. It's not like mainline churches or others that have a really strong similarity to each other and can be defined by what they are. The AGC can't not be defined by what it is, because we've chosen to be quite different in the way we do ministry, although the rallying point is a conservative theological stance. And so that's why there's no clear picture. That's why it's hard to answer the question.
Yeah.
So you'll go to one church and it'll have a very, very traditional philosophy of ministry. The style of worship, the style of ministry, the structures of ministry will look very much like a traditional kind of a church. And then you'll go to others where that's just not even close to the truth, They have a very liberated philosophy of ministry because of the people they're choosing to serve in the community God has placed them. And so that's why there's no clear picture. And so we actually kind of take pride in the fact that you can't define us.
Yeah.
Because if you could put us in a box by definition, then that's maybe not a good thing.
Yeah. Where it's, and listener, I'm not picking on Baptists. I like Baptists. But at points when people are like, well, are you like Baptist? Anybody who knows more, you're like, well, which one of the 37 sub-branches of Baptists are you equating us with? But you can't do that.
No, and we love these other denominations.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
And the Alliance and the Pentecostal. I mean, we just absolutely love what God is doing broadly in denominations. So yeah, but it's hard then for us to be compared to any of them.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Sometimes it's frustrating for people in the church when they ask the question, well, what's the AGC? And we can't actually paint the picture. But we actually take pride in the fact that there is no picture to be painted. And we really do rely on the Holy Spirit leading the individual church leaders to be what they need to be to the people that they've been called to serve for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of the kingdom. And so we're not like anybody else, and we're like everybody else, you know. So,
which is a great way to sum it up. Thank you for doing that. It's an interesting conversation I've had more and more. I was talking with someone about it at work, and they were like, "What church do you go to?" Because they're looking for a new church, and I mentioned St. Clair, and they're like, "Oh, what's the denomination?" I'm like, "Ha ha ha." Yeah. And then I'm like, "It's the AGC," and then I'm like, "How do I describe this?"
Technically, it's not a denomination.
Yeah.
It's an association. I mean, that's a technicality, but technically we are just an association. We do not have a top-down structure, even if we do have a headquarter with regional director and president and such. But the AGC also functions in Haiti, Kenya, and India. So there's AGCs around the world as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so they function more denominationally because the culture in which they live values that. And so there's in excess of 4,000 AGC churches outside of Canada. So it's bigger than the Canadian people understand it to be.
Wow, see that, and I've looked online. That I didn't know. I knew we had some down in the States, but I didn't know it was that worldwide.
Yeah, no, it's not worldwide, but we have these networks in other parts of the world that are using our denomination for help and insight and support, and so yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Just because, and listeners, I'll post the link to the original interview from back in April 2016 under this post, and it'll be on the 2099 One Cross Street site. But just for people who don't know you and haven't had the chance to click that link yet,
yes.
Just to jump back to some of those questions, I've had the benefit of knowing you for years. Like you became the pastor of Calvary in
January 2003. January
there
1.
We go.
Yep.
So in 2003, I've known you since I was like 13, 14.
Right.
And then grown, of course, to know you as an employee, and then
as my daughter's husband.
Yes. I was going to be like, as the boyfriend first.
Well, yes.
Yeah. So I've had the benefit of knowing you and you knowing me through all those weird phases with the afro and
yes.
Chris as the teen, the weird guy.
The all black wearing, heavy metal listening guy that used to visit my house and I had conversations about your listening choices.
Yep. Good times, though.
Yes, they were. They were. And you were a growing man.
Oh,
you really were.
But I've had the benefit of knowing you. Not everybody has. Yes. So could you share a bit about your testimony?
I mean, I sometimes tell people that I was born a Christian, which is not theologically accurate by any means. But the truth is I was raised in a very authentic Christian home, one that not everybody's had the privilege of being a part of. And so my home was just genuinely Christian, loved the Lord, loved laughter, loved authenticity, chose to be real, even if it didn't follow the trend that everybody else was at the time. Chose to try to break out of its legalism where it made sense to do so. And so I sort of grew up in that sort of environment. And I was the youngest of 3 boys. And so my parents sort of had to cut their teeth on 2 older boys before coming to me. And so I had the benefit of their growth as parents and as Christians. And so in that context, it's fairly easy then to see the beauty of Christianity and of Christ and to want that. And I'm not sure how purposefully interested I was in Christ until I was, towards high school. But I would say I'd made a profession of faith when I was 5 years old. Whatever that means, whatever I thought that to mean.
Yeah.
You don't really have you don't have a clear theology when you're 5 years old. But you do understand some things. And so I came to understand Christ, that I needed to receive him as Savior, and I did that. It was in high school that I was sort of thrown into leadership roles that I didn't really think that I had earned, deserved, or wanted. So much earlier than I thought I would have taken leadership roles. And we had a youth group, and there was in excess of 100 people, 100 youth in it at the time.
Wow.
So it was a larger church, obviously, and a larger ministry, and I was sort of the lay leader of that, like in grade 10 or 11, under some very, very important sponsors, 3 couples, actually. And I don't know, they must have seen something in me that made it valuable for them to ask. But not that I wanted that or saw that in myself. I just went along with it. But so throughout the high school, then I had a lot of leadership sort of stuff thrown on me, and I just went with it because I was asked to. And I'm not a fighter by nature. So if somebody asks, I'm going to say yes, and I'm not risk averse by nature. So I just. Okay, well, I'll do it, right? And so you're laughing because you've seen that in me.
Well, I'm also laughing because you just dropped risk averse, and I'm like, there's one of your doctorate words. Or
yeah, okay. Yes.
I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, there we go. Well, I'll throw them in from time to time to keep you awake here.
Like hobby horse.
Hobby horse. That's another one of my idioms. Anyways, I was doing this work and ministry in the church in particular, just as a high school kid. So it seemed to make sense after high school graduated that I would go to Bible college. Why not? Mm-hmm. Seemed the thing to do. I wouldn't say God led me in so many terms, but God led me, right? Right? Yeah. So I didn't have any clear calling, clear obvious reason to go, but why not? So I did, and it was there that I sort of began to develop an interest in church, and a church in Toronto asked if I would intern with them, which lasted a couple of years, and while I was at school. So the interesting thing was I didn't invest as much at the school as I did in a church. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of cut my teeth in real ministry while I was learning, and then so that's a bit of my background right up until sort of college days.
Yeah. And then just because as you were talking I was thinking this, I think particular shout out to your parents, because as you were saying about how they raised you in your home, I was realizing all 3 of y'all, you, John, and Rob, are involved in ministry to varying degrees, and have been for years. And then all of y'all's kids have gone on to be involved in ministry to varying degrees. So just that staple of a home, and then how it goes generationally.
Yeah, well, there is something interesting. There is no guarantee.
No, there isn't.
There is no guarantee, and none of us, and I in particular, would not claim that result is because of what we did.
No.
Because you can't do that. It's God that does it. He's the sovereign one, and good people do good things, and children choose to go their own way. But by the grace of God, you're right. Your observation is right, that if there's an authenticity about your life with Christ, then it becomes real to the next generation, and they recognize for themselves this is real, and then they receive Christ and they want to walk and follow, and quite frankly, there's a bunch of people, and probably my dad to this day, who's 94, they just prays every day, hours, just asking the Lord to provide Christian homes for all of his extended family. And so I'm sure that the Lord is just honoring that today.
Yeah.
Right? That authenticity today.
Yeah. Man, your dad's awesome.
Well, he is an awesome man.
Oh, yeah. You kind of touched on this during your during sharing of your testimony. You've had many roles over your vocational career, and you've served all over the place. And to me, it's interesting. I'm not sure how many people realize just how much a person in, especially pastoral ministry, does kind of bounce around. Like, a lot of it might be Ontario, but could you walk us through some of that? Because you've done some moving around with your roles, and you said you were in Toronto for that first bit, which is actually new information to me. So I was like, oh snap, there was Toronto and then back out, and then
no.
Oh no, okay.
No, I mean, I was I was born and raised in Burlington, and spent most of our lives there. Although my mom was from Toronto,
okay,
so that could be part of the reference there. No, I mean, I'm a bit entrepreneurial. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in the creating of new things and the developing of things, and then stabilizing of things. And once they're at that point, I feel like oftentimes somebody better than me can come along and sort of put teeth to it. And so I'm somewhat of a entrepreneurial type of person. And so that explains a little bit about the variety, the diversity of the things that I've chosen to do over the years. And so it started off operating heavy trucks with cranes on the back of it, and when I was putting myself through college, and so that was interesting, manual work. And I've done a fair bit of manual work the earlier years, but then I was 10 years as an associate pastor in a large ministry, and then also in the middle of the 10 years, for 5 years, started a business, built and sold a graphic design business. So that's just raw business, entrepreneurial work. And then I have done 5 years as a lead pastor in a small town, just a really small town, multi-staff church. So, but a small town, which is really outside of my background, but an interesting diversion for us all. And then, as you'd said, into Toronto, into an inner city work, for 10 years, over for 10 years there. And then, 4 years as a director of professional development for an international faith-based NGO. And part of that was living in Thailand for 6 months. And also we lived for a short period of time in Chicago while I was doing training. So we've sort of been all around. Right now I'm balancing those three things: a consulting business, the role with the denomination, and helping out at a local church as a teaching pastor and leading pastor.
Yeah.
So you put all that together, there's a lot of variety and diversity in there, but much of it is because I am a sort of a builder, refiner sort of guy, and then I feel like I need to leave that to somebody else. Yeah,
and a point you're very much a guy who needs something to do.
Oh, I very much am.
Yeah,
I need stimulation. My mind I'm going all the time.
Yeah, retirement's going to be interesting. I'm not sure if you'll ever actually do
I don't think I will. I'm not sure that's a possibility, but we'll see.
Yeah. This is another one from our previous interview, but it's always an interesting question for me. Are there any particular preachers or authors or theologians that you like, that you really learn from, that you like spreading? I just like sharing those resources, because even though with certain people, like, you might get some of the same people, but it's for different reasoning.
Right.
And then also some people just might be like, who the heck is that guy?
Sure. Well, some of the books I've read recently that have been formative to me, not necessarily new information, but better ways of saying it. One of them is Peter Scazzero's book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. That has a great great section on leading out of your singleness or leading out of your marriage. And it's very, very, very well done, very well thought out. And frankly, you know, being an emotionally healthy leader is an important target that we're all trying to reach. And so it's the kind of topic that'll never be, you won't solve that one. So you need the resources for that. I've also enjoyed recently reading Mark Buchanan's book, The Rest of God.
Yeah, that's
rest,
a great one.
meaning Sabbath. That's great because it really helps you to understand life as a whole before God. So, you know, I just highly recommend that one. I enjoyed the leadership writings of Bobby Clinton, I think it's J. Robert Clinton, or it's either Robert J. Clinton, I'm not sure, but an old book called The Making of a Leader. It was very formative for me to understand myself and why I do what I do right from age 0. And so that was really helpful to get a bigger picture of God's sovereign flow in life. So that one is a fabulous one to read. More recently, 2 proteges of Robert Clinton, whose names are, and I will get this wrong, Reese and Lone, I think are their last names. But the book is called Deep Mentoring. And it was very helpful in understanding the whole process of passing on the good things God has wired into you. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm at an age and stage of life where that's needs to be more a part of my life, as I try to hand off some of those lessons learned before I leave the scene, so that people behind me can carry on with on the strength of some of the things God has been doing in my life. So those are some of the guys that have been sort of
awesome,
helped by. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts because I did a lot more driving each week, and I haven't done a lot of that. I have listened to R.C. Sproul a fair bit. Yeah. Only because he just walks through texts of the Bible, and he's just opening up the scriptures, and so I just enjoy being stimulated and reflecting on a passage of scripture. Whether or not you agree with everything he says or how he says it, it's neither here nor there. It's stimulating to be a part of the be in the scriptures. So I've been doing that, and more recently I spent 4 months in the Gospels, just reading basically 1 chapter a day for 5 days of the week, and journaling what are the behaviors of Jesus. Not what are the activities and whatnot, what are the lessons, not those types of things, but how did he behave? So you have to sort of read between the lines, and ask the question, well, how did he behave, and why would he do that, and what does that mean for me? And so as of late, this sounds a little super spiritualized, but as of late, best resource is just the Gospels, you know, with a good question in mind like that. Wow, it's just opened up lots of interesting thoughts for me. So those are some of the people and things stimulating my mind these days.
A resource that's the Bible? No, we can't listen. And I love that you mentioned Sproul, just because on Podbean he's been popping up a lot of on my recommended downloads. So I was listening to him a lot a couple weeks ago, because there was stuff around the time of the anniversary of the Reformation.
Oh yeah.
And then on the kicker side, Podbean was like, "Oh hey, we noticed you're downloading Christian stuff. Here's some Joel Osteen." I'm like, "Oh come on,
all right, that's a stretch." Yeah, okay.
What you doing?
Yeah.
So you've also been doing teaching a little bit, and developed a bit of a curriculum for Heritage, right?
Yeah, the president of the seminary asked myself and my cousin to develop a certificate in church health. So it's really a practitioner's degree, right? Now, both of us have the academic qualifications to pass their certifications, right? Yeah. They've got to keep certified with the certifying, and it is a master's level study, so it doesn't count towards a master's. But really, the point was, I've been a practitioner all my life. I've taken whatever it is I'm learning and just trying to work it. So from a real life, down to earth practitioner's perspective, what would be some learnings in terms of church health. And so we developed an 18-month, 5 intensive course to walk guys and girls through developing church health. What are the, benchmarking it.
Wow.
And understanding what church health is, what it can be, how to measure it, how to understand what your areas of strength and weaknesses are, and then how you can then develop your own leadership towards meeting some of those areas of need. And so we developed the whole program, and then taught the first intensive to sort of get the ball rolling, and then the other 4 intensives are led by other professors who have unique strength in the areas that we recommended.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's exciting. That's also a lot.
It is a lot, but I mean, it was But you know what? I love it, and my dream, and this is a dream at this point for the HEC, is that we do the same thing for our guys, a boot camp, maybe you might want to call it. So our men and women coming into pastoral service, I would love to see that we have that kind of a cohort where we really train our men and women, not in theology. The assumption is they've come from a seminary or whatever already, but what does it mean to be an HEC? What does it mean to lead? How do you reach out into what I call emerging generations, but the newer, younger leaders? How do you bring those? How do we mentor young leaders? And just, creating church health. How do we do that? I mean, some of the same things at the certificate at the seminary level is something I would love to see us formalize within our denomination. And so I'm not sure whether I'll get the opportunity to do that or not, but that's a dream that I have.
Awesome. Well, hopefully and prayerfully.
Yes, maybe it'll happen.
Maybe it'll happen. How have you seen the Lord at work within the AGC?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of things happening, and I don't even know all of them. Partly because I haven't worked there that long, nor that much. But what's interesting right now is that the AGC is going through a complete restructuring of its leadership from the top down. Just so we're moving to a brand new governance model, which is bringing responsibility and authority together in some of these roles.
Right.
So because the AGC, in terms of its leadership, much of it has been volunteer-based, then it's sometimes hard to get movement because the volunteers come and go. But we're moving much more to a staff-led kind of an organization where we can be given responsibility but also given the authority to get things done. So, you know what? Changing that mindset is huge. It's very hard work. Very hard work. And so where I've seen the Lord at work is the changing of minds of our leaders, searching for a new way to be more productive for the kingdom. And, it's so easy to fall back into old ways of doing things. And I think the way I've seen the Lord work in the last couple of weeks, frankly, is the changing of minds, even of older people within the organization who are anxious to see the kingdom expand, but are willing then to lay aside their own opinions about how it should be led.
Yeah.
And that's massive. The changes of heart is what only the Lord can do.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but also, I mean, just yesterday I was with 2 church planters. One who planted a church on Thanksgiving weekend. So how many weeks is that? 7 weeks ago?
Wow.
And another one just last year, so less than 52 weeks. It's just interesting to see, 2 brand new churches just recently, and it just happened to be in one of my meetings. There are other church parenting projects going on within our group, but it was just fabulous to see that, the Lord is actually continuing to do that within our own nation. So, there's a couple of illustrations of the Lord working.
Awesome. Well, thank you, T, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to answer these questions. Anything else you'd want to add in before we go?
No, I'm glad to share, and I'm glad to help to coach leaders. That's
Yeah.
what I do, and it's my business to help people understand themselves in a better way.
Yeah.
And understand their own preferences and abilities, and then to help them stretch beyond their own preferences and beyond their own abilities for the kingdom of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a joy for me. So if some of your leaders are interested in that, I do that professionally, and it's how I make a living. So
yeah.
so if there is a need for that kind of thing out there, then yeah, I'm always glad to chat with the guys to see if professional coaching is a good idea for them.
Is there a thing I could put down at the bottom for people to hit you up at, if that's
sure? Just I like my email, so tom@encourageleadership.ca.
Awesome. Dear listener, if you know anybody who is interested in that, I will definitely pop that email down on this post.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'd be glad to help.
No problem. And thank you again for coming in, and hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for listening, and God bless, my friends. Take care.